Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Around, and today we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of a monster movie classic that is not only one of my favorite Christmas horror movies, well, I mean, it's one of my favorite Christmas movies, but is considered by many to be one of the quintessential 80s movies. Of course, I'm talking about Gremlins, written by Chris Columbus, produced by Steven Spielberg, and directed by Joe Dante. This movie is a classic in every sense of the way. Gremlins are such a part of our pop culture today, even 40 years later. So, like we've been doing, with Alien and the Mummy, I'm doing a 40 fun facts video for every year since Gremlins release. But guess what? You guys are getting a bonus video today. That's right. There is a companion video to this because, get this, Gremlins was released the exact same day as Ghostbusters. That's right. In June of 1984, you could have gone to the movie theater and done a double feature of Gremlins and Ghostbusters, which would have made for one hell of an afternoon. So, I'll put a link to that other video in the description. And without further ado, here are 40 fun facts about Gremlins.
Number 1. The whole concept and idea of Gremlins became popular during World War II, in which Royal Air Force pilots would blame the anonymous creatures on anything that went wrong with their planes. Number 2. Steven Spielberg first took notice of Joe Dante when he directed 1978's Piranha. At the time, Universal filed a lawsuit alleging that Piranha was plagiarizing Jaws. When Spielberg watched the movie, he realized it was a parody and got Universal to back off with the lawsuit. But he was so impressed with Joe Dante that he hired him to work on both the Twilight Zone movie and Gremlins. Number 3. Before hiring Joe Dante, Steven Spielberg considered hiring a very young Tim Burton after watching some of his early short films and being really impressed with them. He ultimately decided against it because at the time, Tim Burton hadn't directed a feature film yet. Number 4. In the original script, Gizmo himself turned into a gremlin and occupied what would later become the role of Stripe. Steven Spielberg argued, however, that he should never turn into one because the audience needed a good guy. Number 5. The film's novelization delves much deeper into the history of the Gremlins and the Mogwai. We learn that the Mogwai were created by an alien scientist. However, their physiology was so unstable that it resulted in the vast majority of them turning into gremlins. Number 6. Earlier drafts of the script featured gremlins killing a dog and chopping off the mom's head. Joe Dante never bothered filming these scenes because he thought they went way too far. Number 7. Mogwai roughly translates to gremlin or demon in Cantonese, the dialect of Chinese most commonly spoken in Hong Kong. Number 8. At one point, the production planned to use monkeys to play the gremlins. However, this idea was scrapped because working with animals was deemed way too unpredictable. Number 9. Another earlier draft of the script had much more of a commentary about the dangers of trafficking and importing endangered animal species. This was dropped, however, because the production didn't want the movie to come off as too preachy. Number 10. The main reason for the keep the Mogwai and Gremlins away from bright lights rule was very practical, because filming them in darker lighting hid some of the imperfections in the special effects. Number 11. Since this was a Joe Dante movie, of course he cast Dick Miller in it. This was the 5th time they had worked together, and they would work together on a total of 17 movies. Number 12. A few of the executives at Warner Brothers were concerned that Phoebe Cates wasn't wholesome enough for the role of Kate because of her very famous topless scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Joe Dante, however, didn't care and felt that she was plenty wholesome and that she had excellent on-screen chemistry with Zach Galligan. Number 13. The reason for the significant age difference between Zach Galligan's character Billy and Corey Feldman's character Pete is that Feldman was cast before the script was changed to make Billy a little bit older. Number 14. The actor playing the Chinese merchant, K.A. Luke, was 79 at the time of filming, but he looked much, much younger and excellent for his age. As a result, they had to put heavy makeup on him just to make him look 79. Number 15. Gremlins was the first Warner Brothers movie in nearly a decade to use the iconic shield logo that had mostly gone out of use in the 1970s. Number 16. Despite being set at Christmas time, Gremlins was shot during the spring and summer of 1983 and then released in June of 1984. Number 17. Each Gremlin animatronic cost roughly $30,000. As a result, Zach Galligan claims that security would check people's trunks every night as they left the set to make sure no one was stealing one. Number 18. The voice of Gizmo was provided by comedian and host of Deal or No Deal, Howie Mandel. He even recorded Gizmo's voice in several different languages and had to learn his lines phonetically for that. Number 19. The town of Kingston Falls probably looks very familiar because its town center was the same set used for Hill Valley in Back to the Future. Number 20. There is actually some debate as to the location of Kingston Falls. The original script by Chris Columbus sets it specifically in Pennsylvania. However, due to the fact that the second movie takes place in New York City and they mention having lived upstate, many people believe that it's somewhere in upstate New York. Number 21. During production, Phoebe Cates' parents gifted her a moped which she used to drive around set, and apparently was very known for crashing it. Number 22. Before he was playing Mike Ehrmantraut on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, a young Jonathan Banks plays one of the police officers in the town of Kingston Falls, which kind of fits Mike's backstory that he was a former cop. Number 23. The infamous Santa scene was a point of huge contention and controversy even before the movie was released. Both the studio and Steven Spielberg didn't like it at all. Joe Dante argued that it was necessary because it captured the duality of the comedy and horror that was the movie, and ultimately Steven Spielberg said that it should be left in because this was Joe Dante's vision and he didn't want to impede upon it. Number 24. The young boy who played the grandson of the merchant, John Louis, would only act in 2 more movies after Gremlins before retiring completely from acting. He is now a medical doctor. However, he did return to the franchise in the 2022 animated series Gremlins: Secrets of the Mogwai. Number 25. When Pete's father is away on business, there's one scene where he's calling back home that features cameos from Steven Spielberg and Jerry Goldsmith, as well as a time machine from the H.G. Wells adaptation that disappears in between shots, suggesting the man actually traveled in time. Number 26. If you look closely at the shelves of the toy store, you'll see a cameo from E.T. as well as other Warner Brothers properties. Universal gave permission to use E.T. because Steven Spielberg was an executive producer of the movie, but when Joe Dante wanted to have the Gremlins rip E.T. apart and destroy him, that's where Universal drew the line and said no. Number 27. Another scene that had to be toned down to make the film more family-friendly was the death of the science teacher, Mr. Hansen. Originally, he was supposed to have hypodermic needles stuck all over his face. This was changed to just a single one in his butt. Number 28. Gremlins was the final acting role of Scott Brady, who played the sheriff. His acting career went all the way back to the 1940s, but he sadly passed away a year after Gremlins came out at the age of 60. Number 29. The scene in which Stripe attacks with a chainsaw wasn't in the script. Joe Dante added it because he's a huge fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 30. Judge Reinhold's character, Gerald, sort of disappears from the second half of the movie. Initially, he had a much larger role, but it was cut down for time. A deleted scene reveals that he was hiding in the bank vault the entire time, slowly going insane. Number 31. Another character who seemingly disappears is Corey Feldman's Pete. The novelization reveals that he felt so guilty over the death of Mr. Hanson that he ran away from town. Number 32. When Warner Brothers executives watched an early cut of the movie, they complained that there were too many gremlins, to which Steven Spielberg replied, "Maybe we should remove all the gremlins and just call the movie People." Number 33. As we mentioned earlier, Gremlins was released on the same day as Ghostbusters and narrowly came in second with $12 million for their opening weekend to Ghostbusters' $13 million. Number 34. Gremlins remained number 2 at the box office for 6 weeks in a row, just behind Ghostbusters, and wound up grossing $212 million. It remains one of the highest grossing movies of all time to never actually hit the number 1 spot at the box office. Number 35. Gremlins received somewhat mixed reviews, with critics like Siskel and Ebert praising it, but Leonard Maltin criticizing it for being icky and gross. He would later have a cameo in the sequel where he shares his views on the first movie before being attacked by gremlins, which kind of makes him a cool sport. Number 36. Gremlins won Best Horror Film and Best Director for Joe Dante at that year's Saturn Awards. Number 37. The success of Gremlins kicked off a wave of tiny terror horror movies about small creatures wreaking havoc. This included Critters, Ghoulies, and Trolls. Number 38. To this day, Joe Dante claims that he actually prefers Gremlins 2 to the first one, because it allowed him to go more all out with the comedy and satire. Number 39. Gizmo is widely credited as being the inspiration for the Furby doll, which, for those who remember, was all the rage in the late 90s. They even made a Gizmo-themed Furby. And finally, number 40. Joe Dante still owns the prop for the Peltzer Peeler Juicer and listed it for sale in 2021, along with an NFT to serve as its certificate of authenticity.
Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments which ones did you know already, which ones surprised you. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, your town may get overrun by tiny, murderous, but also hilarious gremlins. Be sure to check out the companion video for Ghostbusters. And as always, every day is Halloween.